Hello there. Here we are with issue 42, the bonus part. So, we are going to talk about the YT-2000 light freighter. So, again, this was built by the CEC, the Carillion Engineering Corporation, and it's a light freighter. It's only, let me change my glasses here, 9.4 meters long, so it's quite a bit shorter. Maximum speed is 800 kilometers per hour in atmosphere. It has a Class 2 hyperdrive with a Class 12 backup. It has shielding and navicomputer, 2 laser cannons, 4 crew, 7 passengers. Cargo is 115 tons, which we will learn is 15 tons more than the YT-1300. So this goes through and it basically talks about how successful the YT-1300 was, and they wanted to improve on it. So they made a couple of interim ones, which was the YT-1760 and the YT-1930. I'll post pictures here if I can find them, but if not, then you'll just have to use your imagination. So, but they were based on the YT-1300 variants, and so that's important to note. With the 1930, it was based on the variant that would have the cockpit in the middle, similar to the YT-2000, because there was a variant of the YT-1300 that did have that. So it was something of a stopgap model. The YT-1930 was cheap and could carry a lot of cargo and was very stable. Still, not everybody liked the overall design. The central cockpit meant that forward mandibles could not be used for freight loading, and it blocked the entrance to the traditional loading area of the YT freighter. Less than 1,000 were produced, but some of their key innovations were implemented into this interim model's successor, the YT-2000, and that's what the YT-2000 is here. It was a far more worthy successor of the YT-1300, and it was a brand new design built from the ground up, although they were, pretty keen to make sure that they kept a lot of the familiarity with the YT series. It had a symmetrical layout for the hull, and again, it could actually offer 15 tons more capacity. So that's pretty interesting. It came standard with the Class 2, which I don't remember what the YT-1300's standard hyperdrive was, but I'm guessing it was like a Class 3 or something. The price was 150,000 credits, or you could buy them used for 45,000. So that's pretty interesting. While the cockpit was derived from the 1930, it juts out beyond the mandibles to give an unprecedented, unobstructed view, especially in examples where the pilot's seat is fitted ahead of the co-pilot's. One new feature offered as standard is the cockpit doubles as a lifeboat that can detach itself in an emergency. CEC figured this would appeal to safety-minded crews that would otherwise have to rely on separate escape pods or rescue craft to evacuate their transport. An optional upgrade was to add a Class 12 hyperdrive to the lifeboat. So there you go. And this down here is talking about some of the people that operated them, and they were known as tramp freighter operators. So I won't go into it, but they mentioned 3 different ones that were very kind and had a bit of an allegiance to the Rebel Alliance. So this part here was especially interesting. So the design proved very promising until the YT-2000 became a victim of industrial and corporate espionage, when early plans of the new model were leaked and came into the possession of rival shipyards. This leak forced Carillion Engineering Corporation to release the YT-2000 before the ship had been properly tested, and it was launched on the civilian market a couple years before the Battle of Yavin. Fortunately, the early release didn't turn out to be a total disaster, although the YT-2000 was considered touchier than the more reliable YT models. The ship became an instant favorite with its owners. They liked the additional cargo space, the strong defensive systems, the outstanding view from the cockpit, and the ship's amazing maneuverability, as well as its many opportunities for modifications. However, despite the good sales of the YT-2000, CEC discontinued the line pretty quickly when its successor, the YT-2400, was unveiled. This time, enough precautions had been taken so the design would not fall victim to espionage. So I'll also if I can find a picture of a YT-2400, I'll share it there. So for behind the scenes, the YT-2000 was part of the X-Wing Alliance game. So it was specifically designed for the 1999 LucasArts video game, the Star Wars X-Wing Alliance. The Otana serves as the personal transport of the game's main character, Ace Azamine, and his final missions feature the Battle of Endor, during which the Otana is led into battle by Lando Calrissian and Nien Nunb in the Millennium Falcon. A few source books written since the game have included the YT-2000 model and helped to expand the history of this particular YT series. So that's pretty cool. This here is basically talking about Ace Ozman and how he got it. So his dad and brother um, had kind of been working with the Rebel Alliance, and then they ended up getting killed or whatever. And Ace took it over, and since it was owned by the family, he took it over and he continued working with the Rebel Alliance. So that's pretty interesting. In Guide to the Galaxy, we're going to talk about planets and moons and what the difference is. So the main difference between planets and moons is a few things. So it's definitely something that has been debated over for quite some time. Basically, by definition, it has to orbit a star, and it has to have enough gravity that it can capture its own atmosphere. So those are kind of the two main things about it. But many scientists say that the planet also has to be large enough for the gravity to have cleared its orbit by attracting all smaller bodies in the immediate neighborhood, excluding its own satellites, commonly known as moons. This definition was added to exclude the larger bodies found in asteroid belts and other debris fields. But as many of the largest planets in the galaxy share their orbits with some other small bodies, there is still controversy about this. Finally, the planet's shape has to have become stable due to its gravity. This means that it will be a regular rounded ellipsoid, although there are substantial inhabitable worlds that are far from regular shapes, such as Polis Massa, and we talked about Polis Massa. That was the shattered former planetoid, and the and pedants can argue forever about how rounded a dwarf planet needs to be before it can be called a true planet. There are two main types, gas and rocky, and gas giants are just that, they're giants. So this kind of breaks it down. So this is Bespin at 118,000 kilometers. Camino, which is 19,000 kilometers, and anybody that played Knights of the Old Republic would remember, or no, not Knights of the Old Republic. This is Camino is where the sorry, I was thinking of a completely different planet. I don't remember what the name of that one is actually. Camino is where the clones come from. Sorry. There's Dagobah, Coruscant, Naboo, Tatooine, Hoth, and Mustafar. And then when we're talking about moons, we have Yavin here. So this talks about the difference between gas and rocky planets. So that's somewhat interesting. Uh, but then trying to see where it starts talking about the moons, but it doesn't really talk about it. It just basically talks about the planets. Um, I think it probably talks about moons up here. Planets are not alone in supporting life. Many large moons have sufficient gravity to retain an atmosphere and surface conditions similar to inhabited planets. Most of these orbit gas giants, which are large enough to support such large satellites. These include the orbital fourth moon of Yavin at 10,200 kilometers in diameter. It is comparable to Corellia or Tatooine, or the outermost forest moon of Endor, which is only 4,900 kilometers in diameter, is larger than Mustafar. So there you go. Some moons can be larger than planets. So in the real world, the definition of planets in the real world has become more complicated as astronomers discover new bodies inside the solar system and track down extrasolar planets that expand our understanding of the universe. Among the most recent changes, the 2005 discovery of the dwarf planet Eris caused an international committee to decide to downgrade Pluto, formerly considered the ninth planet in the solar system, to a minor planet the following year. Even our own world is something of an anomaly, as the Earth's relatively large moon means that the two bodies fit some definitions of a double planet system. It has even been argued, although not entirely convincingly, that the moon itself can be considered a planet because the alignment of its orbit around the Earth means that it never travels back on itself and effectively goes around the sun in its own right. So, yeah, but it also doesn't capture its own atmosphere and, all that kind of stuff. So, there you go. That is all about the Guide to the Galaxy. Now we're going to talk about combat techniques number 3, evasive maneuvers. So, this was rather interesting. So, basically, it talks about, the, the, for most starship pilots, evasive maneuvers mean something as simple as not getting caught up in anything that could put their vessel in the crosshairs of an unarmed starship. So that's pretty evasive, right? But then, if we start talking about smugglers and whatnot, um, they consider themselves free, independent traders that shouldn't have to operate within the boundaries. Uh, and rules, after all, are meant to be broken. Evasive maneuvers means something entirely different. Their very survival depends on knowing when to risk allowing officials to board, relying on one piece of contraband remaining undetected among 100 other items of cargo. They remain in business for decades because they also know when to risk it all and engage in blatant evasive maneuvers that will give their game away to anyone in authority or, in many cases worse, to rival criminal gangs and pirates. So yeah, it doesn't really go into significant um, like tactics as far as evasive maneuvers. It does talk about evading a tractor beam. So you're caught by a Star Destroyer's tractor beam. The Millennium Falcon turns around 180 degrees to face the Imperial capital ship, and then accelerates straight at the Star Destroyer and makes a close pass at the tractor beam projector to reverse the beam's field. So basically, it goes really fast towards the tractor beam, and it's able to break away. When it breaks away, it does a snap roll free from the Star Destroyer. So it does kind of talk about that um, uh, a little bit more kind of thoroughly. So, and it talks about some of the other things that Han did, like, over Hoth. Uh, he got the three Star Destroyers to end up going towards each other, and they had to perform their own evasive maneuvers um, to prevent them from going on a collision course. And that's what I was talking about here. So that's pretty interesting. And then then it talks about when he latched onto the back of the Star Destroyer, and so that was obviously a pretty slick trick as well. In our behind the scenes, we're talking about the scale size, the acrobatic twists and turns that the Millennium Falcon would have to execute to realize George Lucas's vision of the evasive maneuvers in Empire Strikes Back were the main reason for the creation of the smaller, more maneuverable 32-inch filming miniature. This was this was able to appear in action sequences on its own or against a variety of backgrounds. It was also used in the final sequence where Han conceals it behind the Star Destroyer conning tower, landing on a scaled up section of the Imperial ship for some of the sequences where the Falcon is seen escaping from the Star Destroyer's island. Made a tiny palm-sized filming miniature that would appear to be in scale when the model of the completed Imperial capital ship, even though it was a massive 2.4 meters long. So, yeah, there you go. That concludes everything in issue 42. And again, issue 43, we're going to get our second uh, seat for our gun turret. So we'll be able to get that, hope, apparently knocked out. We're going to get a bunch of screws, looks like some more magnets, because we're going to have another uh, landing gear cover. And so that's where the magnets are going to go for that. And this is part of the bottom, bumps out a little bit where the landing gear goes. So that is everything in issue 42. I will see you next time for issue 43. And I want to thank everybody for watching, and may the force be with you always.